What is up, YouTube? Check out Through the Dream Poet here, and we are out at the old Burra-Burra mine today. The story with this place is it is one of the few mines left in the Copper Hill, Ducktown, McKaysville, Georgia area that is a museum. It gives people a chance to see what these mines were like back in the early 1890s to the 1950s and the 80s. Join me. We're gonna check it out today. Let's do it. Now, I know you can't see it in the background, but there is a tiny field that has been gated off in the mining yard. Now, what that was is that was the head frame, which was erected in 1899. And what that was is it was the original mining shaft to the entire Burra-Burra mine system. They closed it in 1959, and when they did that, they tore down the building. And they also put a concrete slab over it just to make sure no one got hurt. But in the time that it ceased operation, it was about a 2,400 foot drop, and to this day it is still the deepest mining shaft in America. Now, the first place that we're coming to is the mining yard for the Burra-Burra mine, and obviously you can see that there's a lot of machinery left over, a lot of tools, a lot of chains, a lot of drills, and especially this giant crane. The crane itself, it was a purchase made in 1920 in Charleston, South Carolina, and it was reassembled up here. What this giant crane would do is it would take copper ore from the mine and drop it into this giant ore bin, which would later fall into the boxcars below and be taken to places as far as Marietta, Georgia, and even Knoxville. Now, the ore bins, that building has been torn down, but later on in the video we'll see the foundation, and still, even though it's just the foundation, it is gigantic. Now, this is something that I really like about this area, is the last time it was used, and really up until the last day it was operational, they left a lot of stuff behind, especially like a lot of machinery, like back there. That's the crane. I think what they used to do with that is they used to go into the back of this building, the yellow one right over there, and they would that's where they would go into the mine and dig out the copper ore in order for them to go into their business. We'll stop by that area on our way out, but it's really cool. You can see where the mining train rails go into the building and even down into the earth. It almost feels like it's supposed to be somewhere out in the Midwest, when really this is East Tennessee. This is copper country, and it's just, it makes you wonder about how far a man is willing to go in order to make money. It's kind of bone chilling. In this area, it almost makes me feel like the earth is still saying, kill me, kill me. And you could even, like, it was such a bad disaster that even up until I think like maybe like the early 2000s is when the land started to take over again, and you're starting to see pine trees and privet, even though privet's an invasive. It's just overall interesting to see how things take over the way they do. Now, in the entire 60 years that the Burra-Burra mine was in operation, it mined a total of 15 million pounds of copper ore. Where I'm coming from there is it's really sad to hear how this mining industry became one of the worst man-made environmental disasters of the 21st century. They had copper smelters, And the first one was built in Ducktown back in 1854. It was later burned down by the Union Army during the American Civil War. But these copper smelters, sometimes they would operate for weeks on end without ceasing. They cut down a lot of the trees in the nearby areas to fuel these smelters. And it was about 40,000 acres that was cut down, which it led to erosion and played a major part in why, for the better part of the 21st century, they called it the Tennessee Desert. The other part that played a major role in causing this man-made disaster was that while copper was a hot commodity in that area, they were also manufacturing sulfuric acid. And what they would do is they would burn it, they would keep it pressurized. This would cause acid rain, which to some locals, school would even be canceled that the acid rains would be so bad. People that would hang their clothes out to dry, they would go straight up brown. And all of this continued up until 2000 when they decided to say we're ceasing operation in this area. And just a tidbit of information as well. Back in the 80s, the state of Georgia sued the Tennessee Copper Company. Now, the Tennessee Copper Company was the company who owned all of this. It even went up to the Supreme Court. In the end, the Tennessee Copper Company won because if the state had won, several thousand people would have lost their jobs, which it's sad to see how an industry like that is so ingrained into the culture that even the environment, which was completely ripped apart, was willing to be cast aside. We're now going to check out the mining train that used to go through the Burra-Burra mine, as well as we're going to look at the old storage house that used to contain the mine itself. Also, there are a few... Echo! That's pretty cool. I'm sorry I had to do that. We're also going to take a look at a few more of the mining trains that are left over. What you just saw there was the ore bins back in 1914. This foundation is really the only thing left of it, and after I saw this photo, it took me a while to really take a second look and see that this was the actual place. When I saw that photo, I thought it was of an entirely different place, but I was mistaken. Now, I'd like to note, as we're walking past the foundation of the old ore bins, this trail that we're walking on right now is the rail bed for the locomotives that used to pick up copper ore and take it into either Marietta, Georgia, or Knoxville. Now, these mining cars that we're walking past right now, they did not come from the Burra-Burra mine, but they came from other mines in the area. What they were included was a power shovel, a diesel mine locomotive, which is in the front, a compressed air powered engine, and a second power shovel and an ore car. For this video, I had to take a little bit of a detour. I wanted to show everyone what a lot of the original mining cars at the Burra-Burra mine look like. It's in a spot where you really can't see anything. It looks like it's just more or less been thrown to the wayside. But then again, when you think about it, a lot of this machinery left over has more or less been left to the wayside. Not in a bad way, but they're really for historical purposes. I really wish I knew the name of some of these mining cars, especially this big one. This big one really caught my eye, and I really wonder how the locomotives played a part before these pieces of machinery were left over. And if you're curious, copper mining in this area ended in 1987. I thought I'd add that in there. I know earlier I said that everything ended in 2000, but that was the sulfuric acid production. And the Burra-Burra mine sat on a 300-acre tract, and when mining ceased in the area altogether, they left about 500 acres out of the 30,000 as really a reminder to make sure that people don't make the same mistakes later on down the road. And I can honestly see why. It was so bad that astronauts said you could see it from the International Space Station. So interesting to see how almost 30 years makes such a difference in the area. Now this passageway we're going through right now, this was the original entrance for the miners to get into the mine. Before they built this tunnel, really the only thing that they had was a little pig path that went up to the hill to the mine site. They later put this in. As you can tell, it looks rather ran down. Really, it's pretty intact. This big red building right here, this is the boiler house, and it was built in 1901, and what it did was it was basically the entire power source to the whole mining operation. And what they would do is they had these giant boilers, they would heat it up with coal, and this would basically send pressurized air into the drills, into the chutes, and really operating the entire mine itself. But this was shut down in 1917 when the Tennessee Copper Company decided to buy power from the Ocoee Dam. You wouldn't think too much of this little rusted building right here, but what this building was is it originally housed the first truck that the Burra-Burra mine had. Later on, as the mine began to grow and the company did as well, they put a floor into this building, and this is where they stored their spare drills, their spare lights, really their spare anythings. There's a good reason why this building down here is built very far away from all the other places on the mining site. In this place that was built in 1905, this was the powder house. This is where they stored all their explosives, their blast caps, their dynamite. In this building is where they stored all of that. If you're from the Tennessee area and really anywhere in the United States in general, this is a really cool place to check out. The reason also why they have the museum up, they still let tours go through the Burra-Burra mine, is it's really a memorial to really remind us as humanity that we should not let the almighty dollar, this little slip of paper that determines how wealthy we are, that should be the reason why we have to sacrifice our land. Now, I'm really big for land conservancy because it's like without the U.S. government and other nonprofits, we wouldn't have these places. We wouldn't have these landmarks that tell an incredible story. And I can't really get across, but across that fence is the Burra-Burra mine itself. when it collapsed. I don't know how many men it killed, but the day that that mine collapsed was the day this place shut down. And even though I think there's still maybe a few more active mines in this area, there's not that many. But this place is to remind us that really some of these things we shouldn't be doing in the name of humanity. Now, stay posted, stay tuned, keep me up on Facebook, on Dream Poet, as well as my Instagram. I got a lot more stories, and stay posted. Thank y'all for your love and support. Love y'all very much. Peace, y'all.